Everybody loves a good time. Whether you're young or old, the excitement of enjoying yourself is a special part of life.
The Oakland A's were facing the San Francisco Giants for Game 3 of the World Series, and the atmosphere was electric. At the helm of the ABC sports broadcast that evening were commentators Al Michaels and Tim McCarver, who began the night by breaking down stats, strategies, and predictions. For a while, everything seemed perfectly normal, just another highly anticipated game. But then, without warning, the broadcast took a terrifying turn.
So the Oakland A's take.
I'll tell you what, we're having an earth.
At that moment, a massive 6.9 magnitude earthquake ripped through San Francisco, cutting the live feed and sending millions into panic.
Emergency Center, what are you reporting?
There's a major gas leak on Freedom Boulevard.
Okay, where's the leak coming from?
Emergency Center, what are you reporting?
Regarding the earthquake, I'm wondering,
do you need police, fire, ambulance, sir?
Emergency Center, what are you reporting?
A house on fire.
What's on fire? What's on fire?
A house.
What's the address?
All we know is it's at the end of Comstock Field Road, which runs on the dead.
It struck without the slightest indication. No tremors, no warning signs. In an instant, the San Andreas Fault ruptured, triggering what would be remembered as the Loma Prieta earthquake. Caused by the Pacific Plate pushing upward and northwestward by nearly 6 feet at the epicenter, the damage it unleashed stretched into the billions. The Nimitz Freeway crumbled, the San Francisco-Oakland Bay Bridge split before stunned drivers, and entire shopping centers and housing complexes were reduced to ruins.
We have an unofficial word, or it perhaps is official now, 7 people, we know 7 people have died in this crash, including the one, or in this quake rather, including the one when an old building south of Market collapsed on people in automobiles. And there is one other death too, perhaps one on the Bay Bridge when that section of it collapsed. But here trying to get people out of their homes, some injuries, perhaps just panic as well. And this, if it indeed is the big one that we've heard so much about, and people trying to do whatever they can to stop the fire, but part of the problem, obviously, is gas.
One of the deadliest sites was the Cypress Street Viaduct along the Nimitz Freeway. This multi-level section of roadway carried over 160,000 vehicles every single day, making it one of the busiest arteries in the city. On that day, it became a death trap. In a matter of seconds, the upper deck collapsed onto the lower, crushing cars beneath and creating chaos above. 42 of the 63 deaths caused by the quake happened here alone, leaving behind a harrowing scene of lives shattered in an instant. By the end, the earthquake had triggered nearly 4,000 landslides, a small tsunami, 3,757 injuries, and 63 deaths. Yet, as devastating as those numbers are, experts agree it could have been far worse. Because of the World Series, thousands left work early to watch the game, meaning rush hour traffic was unusually light. Had the freeways been at full capacity, the loss of life would have been unimaginable. To this day, Loma Prieta remains the 3rd costliest earthquake in U.S. history. Thousands of families were uprooted forever, and while the city has since rebuilt and reinforced its infrastructure, the scars of that night remain. The haunting footage, news broadcasts, home videos, and survivor accounts serve as a stark reminder of nature's merciless power. Hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, blizzards, no matter how advanced we become, humanity will always stand vulnerable against the sheer force of the natural world. But while nature can devastate entire cities in seconds, sometimes danger is far more personal, like this next tragic story of one man who thought he had found paradise abroad. Elliot Eastman was a 26-year-old from Vermont, USA. He grew up in the quiet town of Heinsberg, where life was calm, uneventful, and, for Elliot, stiflingly small. With fewer than 600 residents, he longed for something bigger, something that matched his love for exploration and the outdoors. By late 2023, he had saved enough money to chase that dream and set off for the Philippines. His plan was simple: travel the country slowly, soak in its beauty, and share in the life and culture around him. But only a few months into his journey, everything changed. Elliot met a local woman named Carisha Jayla. The two began dating, and by July of 2023, they were married. Just 6 months later, in January 2024, Elliot launched a YouTube channel to document his new life abroad with his wife. At first, his videos were modest. No flashy editing, no dramatic effects, just raw, authentic slices of his day-to-day life. And that authenticity earned him a small but loyal following. But in May 2024, his content took a sharp turn. He and Carisha moved to her hometown, a small beachside village in the municipality of Cebuco. Elliot wanted to build a permanent life there. Unfortunately, it would turn out to be the most dangerous decision he ever made. Cebuco lies in what's known as the Philippines' Red Zone, a region notorious for violence against outsiders. Armed robberies, kidnappings, and murders are not uncommon, with more than 40 foreigners reported missing there in the past decade alone. Elliot knew the risk. He even acknowledged it openly in his channel description. "I'm Elliot Eastman. I'm 26 years old, and I came to the Philippines about a year and a half ago, where I met the love of my life deep in the mountains of the Red Zone. I will be showing you my day-to-day life as the first and only foreigner to have ever lived here in Cebuco for a long period of time." Some of his video titles even reference the danger. Still, Elliot pressed forward. He rented an apartment, opened a small grocery shop near the beach, and kept uploading content for his audience. There were moments of unease, times he had to hide from suspicious locals, but for the most part, Elliot seemed to be carving out the life he had dreamed of. Then, in October of 2024, everything collapsed. On the night of October 17th, after spending the day filming several live streams, Elliot sat down for dinner with his wife and her parents. That's when 4 armed men stormed into the home. They wore outfits resembling police uniforms, almost certainly to lower Elliot's guard. But he saw through the disguise and tried to run. Shots rang out. Elliot was hit twice, once in the leg, once in the abdomen. The men dragged him outside to a waiting speedboat and vanished into the night. It was the last time anyone saw him alive. For nearly a month, authorities searched in vain. Finally, on November 12th, police located the kidnappers, but the confrontation ended in a shootout. 3 of the 4 suspects were killed, while 1 was taken alive. His confession painted a grim picture. Elliot had died from his gunshot wounds on the boat, and his body was thrown overboard to hide the evidence. Despite extensive searches, his remains were never recovered. In December 2024, Elliot was declared legally dead. But one question lingered. Why was he targeted? The most obvious explanation was ransom. Carisha herself recalled a chilling parallel. Back in high school, one of her Canadian classmates had been kidnapped for a $50,000 payout. Elliot, as a Westerner in a red zone village, would have seemed like an easy mark. But investigators also unearthed another possible motive. Alongside his grocery shop, Elliot had begun lending money to locals at 20% interest. It's possible a rival loan shark saw him as competition and arranged his removal. This would explain why the gunmen opened fire so quickly. If their goal had been ransom, killing him outright made little sense. Whatever the reason, the end was the same. A young man who had come to the Philippines to build a future with his wife was cut down before it could begin. His YouTube channel, once filled with quiet slices of life, now stands abandoned. Its videos are no longer just travel diaries. They're the only fragments left of the life Elliot once lived. Elliot's story was one of real-world danger, but in this next clip, the threat comes from something supernatural. TikTok user Harry McClary claims that after he and his wife spent an evening experimenting with a Ouija board in their home, life there has never been the same. Strange sounds became a near-daily occurrence, and objects began moving on their own. Whenever something unusual happened, Harry grabbed his camera to document it.
Hello? Oh my God!
In one clip, Harry and his wife hear a basement door repeatedly opening and slamming shut. Off camera, their dog barks furiously at the unseen threat. When Harry calls out, "Hello?" the noise suddenly stops, followed by a brief silence. Then, something invisible seems to charge up the stairs toward him. Viewers were quick to voice concern over Harry's terrified dog, but he later assured them the dog was fine, just shaken, like the rest of the family. Some TikTok users, however, criticized Harry for not going downstairs to investigate. He wouldn't have to wait long for a second chance. A week later, the basement door begins opening and slamming shut once again. This time, Harry steels himself and rushes downstairs. But as he reaches for the door, it flings open on its own, sending him bolting back up in terror. Up to this point, Harry hadn't captured anything that clearly showed what might be haunting his home. That changed one night in his living room. The door to a display cabinet swings open by itself. Harry hears something sprint past him. In the hallway, a light sways violently, and when he inspects it, the bulb shatters. But there's something you might not notice on the first viewing, something far more terrifying. In the darkness, a pair of glowing eyes appears to be staring at Harry from his laundry room. When he turns, another set of glowing eyes peers at him from the bedroom. In the corner, what seems to be a headless dark figure begins to take shape, growing taller, forming what look like arms. Harry runs. That was the last video uploaded to Harry McClary's TikTok as of this recording. As with all viral paranormal clips, skeptics have their doubts. Some suggest Harry is staging an elaborate ARG, alternate reality game. Harry, however, shrugs it off. At 40 years old, he claims to know very little about TikTok or video editing. So what do you think? Is Harry McClary truly haunted, or has he pulled off one of the most convincing paranormal TikToks yet? While Harry's haunting may leave room for doubt, this next case leaves none. It reveals the very real darkness of a man who turned his life and his sister's into a nightmare. It's November 11th, 2009, when a new YouTube channel quietly appears online. It belonged to a 19-year-old man named Nick Stoutzenberger, and at first, its purpose seemed harmless enough. Nick uploaded a handful of random videos, room tours, skits, casual vlogs from his daily life.
Holding off to answer the phone. Really bad with action poses, as you can tell. Maybe I should have put some action lines like whoosh, 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 but...
Nick was eccentric, though not in a charming way. He openly talked about his poor living conditions, which were largely self-inflicted. He refused to shower, refused to brush his teeth, expressed hatred toward his parents, and carried himself as though life owed him something. His world seemed parasitic, and it showed in everything he posted.
What? Alright, I'm trying to film the cat. Morris.
Through his videos, we learned he had a half-sister named Amber, someone he played games with, even mock stick fights. For a man his age, it seemed childish, but compared to his darker online behavior, it was nothing. Years before his YouTube channel, Nick had been active on role-playing forums, where he met a girl named Anna. The two began an online relationship in 2006, sharing personal details and chatting daily. But as their trust deepened, Nick revealed something monstrous. He confessed to Anna that he harbored disturbing, illegal desires. And worse, he admitted to sexually assaulting his half-sister Amber, the same girl who appeared in his videos, the same girl he pretended to be a brother to. At the time, Amber was a child, living under the same roof as her predator. Word of Nick's confession spread quickly. Anna and everyone else in his circle cut ties with him. Anna even handed his chat logs to police, but to her disbelief, nothing came of it. Meanwhile, Nick chronicled his thoughts on a personal website called Tales of the Nick, where he vented about being shunned. More and more, his posts fixated on Anna, who had long since moved on. He obsessively called her his wife, wrote about their supposed future together, and even launched a blog dedicated entirely to her. By April 2009, Anna had reached her breaking point. On her own blog, she called out Nick's behavior, describing him as obsessive, creepy, and dangerous. She condemned the way he tried to dig up her personal information and made clear she wanted nothing to do with him. Yet Nick never once admitted fault. He didn't think there was anything wrong with his behavior. He didn't think there was anything wrong with his attraction to children. And he didn't think there was anything wrong with what he was doing to Amber. For years, Amber was trapped, and for years, it seemed no one would save her. It wasn't until 2015 that the truth finally broke open. In April of that year, police in Manor Township received a report of sexual assault. This time, it wasn't from Anna. It was from Amber herself. After nearly a decade of abuse, she had gathered enough evidence to come forward. On April 30th, 2015, Nick Stoutzenberger was arrested on 3 counts of indecent assault of a child and 1 count of involuntary deviant sexual intercourse. The abuse dated back to when Amber was just 6 years old. In 2016, Nick was convicted and sentenced to between 16.5 and 40 years in prison. He has since appealed his sentence twice, both times denied. The destruction of a childhood. That's the only way to describe the torment Amber endured. Her formative years were stripped away, replaced by trauma she will carry forever. And as disturbing as Nick's private obsessions were, the next story is maybe even more haunting, because it begins with beauty, but ends with brutality.
Nature is king here. Man can only watch and be humble.
There's nothing out there, it's your imagination.
It was the beginning of yet another journey for the crew of the long-running British television show Gardener's World. Since the 1960s, the program has offered viewers gardening advice, showcased rare plant life, and taken audiences to remote corners of the globe. This particular episode, filmed on February 5, 2020, brought host Nick Bailey to the Drakensberg mountain range of Lesotho, Africa, in search of a single extraordinary flower.
Species which grows wild all over the country and has been a real favourite with British gardeners for generations is the gladiolus.
The bloom was one familiar to many British gardeners, yet in this rugged region, a unique subspecies existed, one so rare it had been documented only a handful of times in the past century. Known scientifically as Gladiolus microcarpus, it thrived only in a single valley within this mountain range. To help track it down, the show turned to Rod and Rachel Saunders, renowned botanists and seed collectors who had dedicated their lives to South African flora, especially gladioli. They often spent weeks or even months in the wilderness, learning everything they could about these elusive plants. For this episode, they were the perfect guides.
Gladioli, there's so many different plant species in South Africa you could have picked.
I think their beauty. Some of them are so exquisitely beautiful, you actually just want to sit down and cry when you see them.
But no matter how experienced, the Drakensberg was never without danger. The climate was volatile, the terrain unforgiving, and even on filming day, thick fog rolled in, cloaking the steep rocky paths. One wrong step could have been fatal. Still, Rod and Rachel pressed forward. Their dedication was unshakable.
We've come about 4 times looking for this plant, and this is the best I've ever seen it. It is looking absolutely gorgeous.
The segment concluded successfully as they located the flower, ending their on-camera appearance. Nick Bailey posted a cheerful photo with the couple to Twitter before parting ways. For Rod and Rachel, however, this was only the beginning. Instead of heading home to Cape Town, the couple launched into a multi-month expedition. Their ultimate goal was the Ngoye Forest Reserve. As part of their seed business, they hoped to collect some of the rarest gladiolus seeds in the world. On February 8th, they texted an employee with a photo of the flower they had been seeking. But tragically, this would be the last message they ever sent. Days later, contact with the couple ceased. When no word came, that same employee reported them missing on February 10th. At first, it seemed like nature was to blame, perhaps an accident, poor weather, or a misstep in the unforgiving terrain. But investigators soon uncovered something far darker. Their car was found abandoned by the Tugela River, its contents stripped. In the trunk lay a massive pool of blood, later confirmed to be Rachel's. As authorities pieced together the evidence, a horrifying truth emerged. On February 9th, a man named Sifo Delvecchio allegedly texted his wife, Bibi, that he had found a good target. That target was Rod and Rachel. Later that night, the couple settled into their tent, unaware they were being watched. Once they drifted off to sleep, Delvecchio reportedly attacked, slashing open the tent and bludgeoning them to death as they lay trapped in their sleeping bags. He then enlisted Bibi and an accomplice, Musa Jackson, to dispose of the bodies. Using the couple's own car, they drove to the banks of the Tugela River, a stretch known to be infested with crocodiles. Believing the reptiles would erase all evidence, they dumped the bodies into the water. But their plan failed. In the weeks that followed, fishermen recovered both corpses, mutilated beyond recognition, requiring nearly 2 months for positive identification. As for motive, investigators believe it was a mixture of religious hatred and greed. Large sums of money were stolen from the Saunders accounts, and their credit cards were used in a shopping spree. Receipts were even found inside Bibi's purse. Though Delvecchio continues to proclaim his innocence, the evidence tells another story. The trial remains ongoing, but for Rod and Rachel, justice has already come too late. They were two kind, passionate people who dedicated their lives to studying flowers, and their final days were spent chasing the rare gladiolus they so dearly loved. While their final interview now carries the weight of tragedy, it also stands as a fitting tribute, a reminder that their last act on Earth was sharing beauty with the world. The flower they sought was the flower they died for.
Trek to get here, and what an incredible treat to see such a special plant in such a niche environment. Thank you.
Pleasure.
It's a pleasure. It's nice to be here.
Their journey ended in tragedy abroad. But this next mystery proves you don't need to travel far to disappear forever. Nicholas Sonderegger was a 28-year-old YouTuber with two passions in life, longboarding and dancing. Under his channel Sunspeak, he uploaded nearly 80 videos showcasing both, but his ultimate dream was to one day become a professional dancer. By 2017, he had moved to San Diego with his close friend Austin, hoping to make that dream a reality. But the two quickly found themselves overwhelmed by the high cost of living in California. With no money for rent, they made a drastic decision: to live in tents and abandoned trailers scattered around the Salton Sea. Once a popular tourist destination, the Salton Sea had long since become toxic, its once glimmering shores transformed into a ghost town. But what made the area dangerous was not the poisoned water, it was something far more sinister. On the night of September 9th, 2018, around 2 a.m., Nick and Austin were asleep in their tent when they were jolted awake by a blood-curdling scream coming from the tree line nearby. Fearful, the two decided not to investigate, and Austin eventually drifted back to sleep. But Nick didn't. For reasons still unknown, he slipped out of the tent alone to find the source of the scream. By morning, he was gone. Austin searched frantically around town and discovered Nick's flashlight lying on the ground just a block away. He immediately called the police, who launched a search. What they found was disturbing. One of Nick's boots, his pants, and a knife sleeve. His other boot, along with his wallet and keys, were missing. But Nick himself had vanished. Then, days later, things took an even stranger turn. Austin returned to an area he had already searched thoroughly, only to now find Nick's shirt and hat lying there, items that hadn't been there before. It was as if someone had returned and deliberately placed them in plain sight. Despite extensive searches, Nick was never found. His family set up a website with every known detail and offered a $10,000 reward for information, but the case remains unsolved. Speculation swirled. Some suggested Austin may have harmed his friend, but investigators found no evidence to support foul play. Others wondered if Nick stumbled into something darker in the desolate Salton Sea community. Yet without more evidence, no solid theories have emerged. To this day, Nick's disappearance remains a cold case. His YouTube channel, Frozen in Time, now serves as the only trace of the life he once lived. An artist chasing his dream, swallowed by the night and never seen again. Nick's disappearance left nothing but questions. But in this last clip, the horror is undeniable. Caught on camera inside one of Japan's most haunted hospitals. Ghost hunter Emax traveled to Japan to investigate one of the country's most notoriously haunted locations, an abandoned hospital with a grim and unsettling past. Locals whisper that countless patients died within its walls, and that their spirits still linger, wandering the empty corridors. And as Emax explored one of the upper floors, his camera caught something chilling. In the middle of a quiet hallway, a wheelchair suddenly rolled forward on its own. No one was near it, and there was no draft strong enough to explain its movement. Some believe this eerie moment could be the spirit of a patient making their presence known, tied forever to the chair that once carried them. Others argue it's proof of the restless energy said to saturate the hospital, replaying itself through objects left behind. For many viewers, the wheelchair moment stood out as a stark, undeniable sign of activity in a place already steeped in dark history. So what do you think? Was it truly the spirit of a former patient reaching out from beyond? Or could there be another explanation behind this chilling movement? Now that was all for today, folks. If you enjoyed these horrifying clips, click to see more on the video on screen.